Tēnā koto, tēnā koto, tēnā koto katoa, everybody. My name is Christina Höppner. I'm a member of the Flexible Learning Association of New Zealand Executive Committee, not joining you from New Zealand today, from Aotearoa, but together with the facilitators from cold and drizzly, rainy Great Britain. And I'm really excited that we have our facilitators here. So let's get right into the session and start with a karakia. Kia ora, te marino, kia whakapapa pona mo te moana, hai hua rahi ma toto te rangi nei, aroha atu, aroha mai, tato ia tato katoa, hui e tai kie. So may peace be widespread, may the seas be like greenstone, a pathway for us all this day. Let us show respect for each other, for one another, bind us all together. So we are all coming together from several different countries today for this learning event. And I'm very happy that I'm joined by Geraldine Foley, Senior Learning Technologist from University College London, Irina Niculescu, also a Senior Learning Technologist from the University College London, Dominic Pates, Senior Educational Technologist, City St. George University of London, and Roger Rees, Design and Development Manager, University of Surrey. What a lot of universities in the UK, and they have come together to take us through this workshop. And this session is coordinated by Flexible Learning Association of New Zealand and also ABLE, the Association for Authentic, Experiential and Evidence-Based Learning, primarily located in the United States. And I'm very excited for this workshop today, so I do not want to take any more time from them and let them get on with our working together. Over to you.
Thanks, that's a really lovely intro. Should we go straight to the next slide, Roger?
Let's do that.
Yeah.
Right. I think this will be me. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are joining us from, and welcome to Working Together for Change. We are absolutely thrilled that you've chosen to spend some of your time with us today. I'm just going to kick off with a little bit of background. I gave a talk at a session with the Centre for Online and Distance Education at the University of London last year called How Green is My EdTech? And this was intended to plant a seed, if you like, to encourage the sector that I work in, which we call the digital education sector, to start thinking about our role, our place in the climate and nature questions that are increasingly starting to be something that all sectors are having to think about, and people in all sectors are having to think about professionally. So as the slide says, it was very much my view that we needed to start addressing these questions within the sector that I was working in, and this is why starting the conversation was important. I was delighted that my fellow panelist today, Irina, followed up with me on LinkedIn afterwards and said, this presentation chimed, we should do something. And then Irina brought her colleague Geraldine and former colleague Roger together. And one of the outcomes of the four of us coming together is development of this workshop. And what we're trying to do is the second bullet point here says that we're looking to prioritize collective action over individual action, as we believe we are stronger together. And we're trying to sort of demonstrate that in what we're doing here. The last point on this slide, very much true, I think, but this is beginning to change, interestingly. The sector is now starting to recognize that the climate crisis is something that it affects everything, and therefore we need a response. Right, I think that might be the next slide now.
Hey, thank you, Dom. And to clarify the purpose for the session we prepared today, It is a workshop. We designed this a few months ago and ran it with different groups of educators and academics as well. And we're really happy to be here today to create a space for us to reflect on how could we individually and as a collective influence positive change when it comes to our field, education, digital education, and really to highlight that because we have so many complex issues to navigate, we really want to make collaboration across institutions and across countries. In this case, it's lovely to have such an international audience tonight, because we are more effective working together, avoiding duplication. Perhaps we've all seen this happening with some of the responses and resources generated for AI. We really want to create space for us to crowdsource what we already have, what we're interested in, but also what we should focus on as a collective. That's my slide.
Thanks. And following on from that, the workshop outcomes are, as Irina said, to reflect on our potential spheres of influence and to actually come together and crowdsource what we have as a sector and in the different institutions that you represent and what we would like or what is missing, and to start that planning that process to help us move forward to try and influence structural change. So what type of resources would be useful and how we can collaborate to increase our influence and impact. If we move on to the next slide. So just some further background. We all met up, as Dom said, discussed that we wanted to do something, and then while the conversations were going on, we attended, me and Irina, a session that was run by a group that links several institutions in London that was on the climate emergency and digital education. And one of the activities in that workshop was to do with looking at the challenges for digital education and potential solutions, but it was very much from an individual focus, but it was really empowering and positive that so many people came and gave ideas. You can see this is a screenshot from the session where people put post-it notes with ideas for the challenges and then potential solutions. And we came out of that thinking this was brilliant, but we wanted something that was a bit more, as we keep saying, cross-institutional and not so individual focused, because we've seen this with the responses to COVID and we've seen it with responses to generative AI. Every institution is coming up with their own resources, their own training, their own workshops. We think, why does everyone have to reinvent the wheel? Why don't we all work together and come up with some shared resources and also use that influence that we have as a sector with different areas that we can influence. So if we move on to the next slide.
And this one is me. So we've given you a bit of an introduction to this workshop and the context. The next few minutes is an activity for those of you, the first activity for participants today. So I look at the participants window. There are 16 people here. So 5 of us, including organizers and speakers. That makes 11 of you. This activity, if you go to what presumably is the most recent version of Zoom, at the bottom of the screen, we have a raise hand icon. I'd like to concentrate on the white dot in the center of the screen. And if you feel you can effect positive change in yourself, can you raise your hand? Roger, let's keep that. There we go. Lovely. So let's, I'll keep my hand up there as well. We can see, let's see how many hands we go up here. Can you affect positive change in yourself? Raise your hands.
For some people, the icon might say react and has a heart. And when you click on it, then you see the reactions.
Thanks.
And we should also note that certain versions of Zoom do tend to lower your hand when you finish speaking, so mine will be dropped there, but most people won't be. Mine back up again. So we've got maximum of 9 hands there. Okay, let's move out of the central circle a little bit there. If you feel you can affect positive change within your immediate team, if you're a line manager, people you manage, if there are peers on either side of you, maybe the manager above you, the people closest to you that you work with, do you think you can affect positive change, your definition of positive change within the wider team? Keep your hands up if you feel that you can, or lower them if you feel you have no ability to influence positive change in your own team. No, I'm seeing one extra hand went up there, which is interesting, or it's gone back down again. Lovely. Okay, let's move out a little bit wider. So into the department that you are part of, if you are part of a department, or whatever is wider within the institution that you are part of. Do you feel that you personally can affect positive change within the wider department that you are part of? Seeing at the moment, most hands, if you keep them up, if you feel you can do that, if you feel you can't, then lower your hand there. Seeing roughly similar sorts of things as well. So still on 9 maximum here. Moving out a little further to the institution that you are part of. I know lots of people here are from universities. We're all from universities in the UK. Some of you are from other vocational colleges, I understand as well. So from the institution that you belong to, do you feel you can affect positive change within the institution? So raise your hand if you feel that you can. I've got 7 on this one, so this is lower so far. Now, last one is looking at the sector itself. So we've defined the sector as digital education. That's the sort of easiest label that we have. You can use your own definitions. That sound is in a very different sector, in the pet sector, maybe. In the digital education, educational technology, learning development, however you would define the sector that you consider yourself as part of professionally, do you feel you can affect change within the sector, positive change? And keep your hand up if you feel you can. So far, I'm seeing fewer hands here, seeing 5 there so far. So interesting. Thank you very much for your participation in that. It looks like we have most changes possible within ourselves, and change itself is harder the further away we get, the bigger we go. Geraldine, I think it's over to you for the next slide, please.
Yeah, thank you, Dom. So we wanted to recognise that this digital education or learning technology, educational technology is quite a wide-ranging field, and there's so many different roles within it. Sure, in this group within us, we have loads of different areas of that we work in, and so we try to break it up into the areas of influence that we think people may work in, and we may have these wrong. There may be other ones we need to think about, but these are the ones that we were coming up with, and then we try to group them into different fields of influence. So we have people, policy, workplace, teaching and learning, and financial. And you'll see these again in a minute, but just to give you some examples, financial might be procurement. It might be if you're involved in supply chain or finding a new technology for your institution or your department. Policy might be if you're working in an institution, maybe you're on some committees or working groups, or maybe you're involved in creating institutional policy. People is much more if you're involved in maybe staff support, guidance and training, or student support, guidance and training. Also, we thought was covered by accessibility and inclusivity. And then workplace, we were looking at the physical learning spaces. Some people's roles involved helping to design those, and maybe even looking at the technologies that are put into learning spaces, and also the equipment that is used for teaching and learning. And then teaching and learning was much more the pedagogy, maybe curriculum or learning design, and the actual content and maybe how it's presented and the tools that are used when doing different types of learning activities. So it's quite a wide range there, but just to start you thinking about where perhaps you fit within that, and it might be that you fit within multiple circles on that diagram. Maybe your role involves several different areas, but bear that in mind as we move on to the next slide. And what we wanted to do was to get everyone to brainstorm together what is already happening in the sector. As we were saying, we really wanted to encourage collaboration and avoid everyone replicating work. So are there toolkits and guidance perhaps in your field of work that are already created? Is there policies and working groups that are working on projects? Are they creating activities or guidance for your institution or your department? And then are there informal activities and discussions going on? So 3 different levels of things again to think about, but in your field, in your area of influence, what is already going on that you may be aware of, you may not be aware of, and that's something that we can take forward and get people to think about and have a look. But for now, this is the first sort of ways of thinking about this. And if I move on to the next slide.
Yeah, so I think just to echo and build on what Geraldine said, before we start the next activity, where we're going to crowdsource resources, but also questions. It's absolutely okay if you never thought about the connection between education, digital education, and the climate emergency. This will be a space for you to reflect about this and think about even a conversation that you had with a friend. That would count as something that is already happening that could help us, or perhaps other informal things like sessions, like maybe book clubs, or spontaneous conversations that you could have, or if you're sending via email a resource to a colleague with, let's say, a recent article written about, let's say, the carbon footprint and its connection to generative AI. So really think about also informal examples, not only the formal top-down institutional projects or committees and working groups. So on the next slide, we have the instructions for this exercise that we're inviting you to do individually to begin with, and then we will create space for you to discuss this in groups, in breakout rooms, and with us. But to start with, we want to give you 10 minutes or up to 10 minutes. We can check with you if you need less time. To fill in a document that Geraldine just put in the chat. It is a Google document, so hopefully everyone should be able to access it, and edit it, even if they are not logged in or have a Google account. And you'll see in there that we have we tried replicating the slide that Geraldine took us through with all the bubbles. The purpose is not to complete everything. We really wanted to make it as authentic and relevant to you. So if you go through the first column, and depending on your role and your background, or even projects that you're working on or what you're interested in, choose that area of education, and then perhaps share if there's anything, an example of a resource that it has been created internally in your institution, your organization, or your team. If you can put a link to it, great. If not, you could just mention what it is. Then in the second column, similarly, you could share resources from other organizations or even other sectors if it is relevant to that area of work. And then lastly, but equally important, what's missing when it comes to, let's say, assessment and feedback and its connection to the climate emergency or accessibility and inclusivity? Have we ever even thought about the connection between these two important areas? And if not, what could help us? What should we, across sectors, start reflecting on? Does anyone have any questions before we start this individual activity? Feel free to unmute and ask or share your question in the chat. I can see people are opening the documents, so hopefully that works. You can also edit it.
So I think that's a return to Roger to share the next screen again.
So I think I'm still sharing, but maybe it's not showing for everyone.
I can see.
Yeah.
You are still sharing. Yeah. Okay, so that's me next. Okay, so thank you ever so much for your participation in that activity. We could see that there was plenty going on in that document, so we're very grateful for any contributions that came into that one. How does all this fit together? So what we are going to do next, we have and noting a comment in the chat that not a stable connection, so good to place some feedback in the chat. We can copy that across into the document as well. So how does all of this fit together? So what we're going to do next is go into some breakout rooms, and we're going to invite you to take a look at the table that you've just filled in, for those of you who are in that particular room. And basically, we're going to ask you to share your thoughts about what you think that we should prioritize. What should we prioritize as a sector? What does the sector need to focus on primarily to get started in making a difference in this space?
Dominic, how do you want to do that? So we have 6 participants at the moment. And do you want breakout rooms and include yourselves in it as well, or just participants?
Maybe we could have two groups of 3 if we have 6, and a couple of us can join.
Yeah, and then we'll let people get started, and then we'll jump in when people are ready. Because you don't want the session runners starting the conversation.
Okay, so I'll create 2 breakout rooms and assign people at random, or let's call it automatically, and let's see how that goes.
And do we have another slide with some instructions for? Was it the next slide? That's a bit early, isn't it? Sorry, I'm jumping ahead. So this activity is just for 5 minutes. We'll put you into breakout rooms, and they've headed in already.
Yeah, they are already. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Okay, so thank you for your participation in that one. I hope that was an interesting or fruitful conversation in the room that you were in. We are going to seek a little bit of feedback on that particular breakout room activity next. So we've got a question here. What would be your top priority for collaboration across HE sectors or other sectors internationally? And of course, what resources or initiatives do we need to develop to support us all in our institutions? Now on the screen, you will see shortly coming up. Thank you, Irina. And that's all present. You will see a QR code on the screen, or if you go to menti.com, as you see at the top of the screen, and use the code 4468953.
Roger, could you go back one? I think you've skipped ahead there. Thanks.
I've also put the link to the Mentimeter activity in the chat, if that's easier, if you're not using a different device, you don't want to scan the QR code.
And as Geraldine says in the chat, if you didn't get to discuss these in your group, then you can just answer these individually. This is one I think we've got 5 minutes for again, isn't it?
Hey, let us know if you have issues. I can bring up the QR code so it's on the side in case you haven't already joined. But you should now be seeing the first question about what should be our top priority for collaboration. And it doesn't have to be only higher education sectors. We know we have colleagues from other the sectors of education, and there's definitely overlaps in everything. So okay, so moving on to the next one. No worries if you didn't get a chance to, you could add your answer via Mentimeter. You could also share via the chat. We'll make sure to include it. But just I'm aware of time, so moving on to the next one. In terms of specific resources or initiatives, I believe you've already started sharing some ideas such as the checklist, but are there any other things that we would need to develop and put into place to help us collaborate across institutions, across sectors and across countries? And are you aware of any projects that are doing this? If so, what avenues, what channels are they using? How could we actually keep in touch and keep exploring this, keep sharing what we're discovering, what we're working on, or even collaborating on specific things? Having a Google site, I think.
About 1.5 minutes in this activity.
Yeah. Open educational resources. With incentives. Unique selling points.
Yeah, so I might as well put an ad block in here. Mohito Yone from University of the South Pacific is going to present the project that the university is doing with open educational resources for STEM educators in the islands in our last Approach Week session tomorrow.
That's a really helpful clarification. I'm sorry, I assumed it is 9 p.m. here. So the word mojito made me think
a different meaning, yeah.
Oh.
I have a 6 o'clock start tomorrow, so no mojitos tonight.
No mojitos tonight. I think really important points about finding common ground and criteria for EdTech providers. Having keywords that we could use. Okay, this is fantastic. Thank you very much. I'm going to stop sharing now and hand over to Geraldine for the final bit of the workshop.
Thanks very much, Irina. So thank you for all your contributions. We'll go through them when we get the chance, and we are starting to collate some of these because, as we said earlier, we've had a couple of sessions. First of all, we did a London-wide event, a workshop, and then we did a UK-wide. So this is even bigger. So we're starting to find out what's out there and try and see how we can share that. And one of the ways that we started looking at this was developing a climate toolkit. We were trying to see how we could create something that would allow people in institutions to start having these conversations. We were quite inspired by the work done by Nature's Workforce, which is a collaboration between various environmental agencies, and I can share the link to that in the chat. But it was focused on quite generic approaches for workforces, and we wanted to make a very specific toolkit that was very similar in the approach, in different steps that you can take, but much more bespoke for digital education. And so using their format of the steps, we were looking at how you could get to know your impact, start asking these questions, collaborate with colleagues, and then hold a conversation like we're doing now with a workshop, and start looking at action, but also share your activities within the sector. So we're still working on this. It's just draft at the moment, but once we do have something to share, if you'd like to be involved and see it, then please give us your contact details. We have a last question on the Menti where we ask for your email, and please keep in touch with us. We will keep the collaborative document open and live, so if you have other things that you want to add and share, please do add them, and we'll be in touch. Once we have the toolkit ready to go, we'll get in touch with Christina and we'll let her know, because we want to carry on this conversation and share and see what you guys are doing as well. So it's very early stages at the moment, but we just wanted to give you the heads up that this was the approach we are starting to take, but we are open to other ideas as well. So if you have ideas, and put them in the collaborative document or the chat, or you know, get in touch with us and let us know, because we're really open to anything, because you know, this is something that everybody should be working on. We're all going to be dealing with the climate emergency, we already are, so you know, we would love us all to work together on this. So I think that's our final slide, unless anyone else wanted to add anything else, or if anyone had any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, or turn on your mic.
Maybe we could stop sharing screen and then see if anyone wants to join to share any comments or any questions. And like we said, please leave your email via the chat. I think we're a small group. I'm not going to share the Mentimeter again. If you'd like us to send you the toolkit, and if you'd like to collaborate in any way, but I'll shut up now in case anyone wants to make any comments.
And I'll thank you for your participation in this as well. It's it can always be a leap, being asked to collaborate and do things with strangers when you don't even see them. But that's fantastic. Nice to see some resources coming up in the chat as well.
Yeah, and we appreciate it's quite early in the morning for a lot of people, so this may be quite a heavy topic to be thinking about first thing in the morning, and especially if you've not really had that time and space before. You know, it takes a while to think these things through. So if you do come up with ideas or come across things, you know, please do share.
And Christina, I don't know if you wanted to wrap the workshop up today with anything.
Yes, I'd very much like to. Thank you so much, Dominic. And thank you, Geraldine, Irina, Dominic, and Roger, for guiding us through the steps that you've been taking, showing us a bit of the thinking that you've already undertaken in regards to the climate crisis, and what we as people working in education can also do in order to help in little ways, because also little ways can be very helpful. And that also maybe even in the first instance that we are just aware of what is going on and then look at how we can improve our little area. And kind of going back to that diagram that you had at the start, we can just focus on ourselves, then maybe on our team, department, institution, and then the wider sector. Now, today was our second of 3 webinars in this year's PODE Week, which Flexible Learning Association of New Zealand is organizing. And PODE stands for the Asia Pacific Online and Distance Education Week that we've now been having already for the 3rd time. And globally, we partner with the Eden Digital Learning Europe Network that is holding its European Open and Digital Learning Week this week as well. I already mentioned in the ad block in our session that tomorrow will be another session that we are having, and I'm really excited that it will be with Mohito Ione from the University of the South Pacific on empowering STEM educators in Fiji, integrating OERs and technology in the classroom. They've been having a wonderful project and really look at how they can also sustainably work with the teachers in the regions that of course are dispersed over so many islands and often also have quite challenging technical situations to deal with, how they can help them work with technology that they have available and also work around and help each other. But I don't want to tell you much more about that because Mohito can talk much better about it. And so I hope that you'll be able to join us then as well. And now to wrap up the session and to release everybody back into their day in the Southern Hemisphere, Aotearoa, New Zealand, Fiji and Australia and similar countries. They're of course into the day, and for the rest of us more in the Northern Hemisphere, in the European part, that we'll get on with our evening and maybe also raise a glass after the session. And for those of you who are joining us from the Americas, have a wonderful afternoon. But before we do that, our finishing karakia, that will then release us out in the day that we have. Po hihiri, po rarama, po oti whakarao, po oti tangata, po oti aroha, te po e here nei a tato. Maori ora kia tato, homie, huie, taikie. And so that means, may clarity be yourselves, may understanding be yours. Through reflection, through personal endeavor, through respect, the virtues which bind us as one may be filled with well-being, for one another bind us together. Kia ora.